All right, homework 3. So this first question, we're asked to create a new column of absolute change in marriage rates between each of these countries between these 2 years. So what we're going to do first is just construct the notebook. And what I've done here is I've already gone through and mounted the Google Drive folder that I'm using, and then imported these packages we typically use, and then define the file path. So this is the file path I'm working with. When you run this, you'll use your own. And then I've also loaded the 2 data sets. So I've just gone in and downloaded the data sets from the course page, and then put them in the folder that we're working with. So one thing we can do in Colab is actually write out the questions in the notebook itself, which can be helpful sort of so we don't have to flip between pages. So what I'm going to do is just call this question 1 marriage rates, and then I'm going to add some text right below with the actual question. So I'm just going to copy this over from the document file and then write that in below. Okay, so we've written in the question, and now we're asked about actually doing some of this work. So what I'm going to do is actually calculate the absolute changes between years. So let's just write in, whoops, this is a text block, so let's write in the question into the code block. And Gemini is going to give us a lot of help here, but we, of course, have to double check our work at every step. All right, so the first thing to do is to calculate the absolute change between the two columns. So calculate the absolute change between 1990 and 2019. And sometimes Gemini will give you some code hints here. In this case, it's not giving us a hint, so we'll just write this from scratch. So what I'm going to do is just, before we do anything big, I'm just going to print out the top 5 rows of the data set with the dataset.head, which just gives us the header. And we can see, so we have the geo labels, so these are the countries, and then we have the years, and then the marriage rates for each of the years. So all we have to do here is just calculate the difference between the 2 years. So here we have marriage, and then I'm going to call this absolute difference, which is just the actual raw value of the difference between the 2 years. So we have marriage, and then we also have so we're looking for the column. And for the first column, we want 2019, and then we want to subtract off the marriage rate for the other year. So we'll just run this, and then let's just look at this again. So once we've defined this new variable absolute difference, that just automatically gets put into the data set because we're telling Python, to create a new column. Okay, so nice. So we've printed this out after we've added this new column, and we get this new absolute difference column. And what we actually want, after having constructed this, is which country in the dataset has the largest absolute change between these 2 years. And we're told, for absolute change, some countries can have a negative change in marriage rates, and we would consider those to be very small. So we want the sort of the largest positive change is the way this question is intended. Okay, so let's find the largest positive change in the positive value in absolute difference. Okay, and let's see if Gemini can actually do this. So I'm not entirely sure this is going to give us what we want, but it's one of the code suggestions, so let's just use it. And so what this is doing is giving us the index for the maximum. And this isn't actually how I would write the code. So this is an example actually of where Gemini can be helpful. Like, this is giving us something that, could be helpful in our investigation of this data set, but it's not entirely what we're looking for. And so we have to, constantly be double checking what the recommendation is. So instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to look for, so I'm going to get the maximum value for the absolute difference. So we can just find the maximum. And this is nice, but what we actually want is to find the absolute difference that's equal to this maximum. So we want to filter our data set actually for the one that is equal to the maximum. So we talk about checking each one of the rows against some condition. So in this case, the condition is just the maximum absolute difference. And like we've talked about, this will give us a list of true and false. And so we just want to, return the one that is true. So this is our filter condition, and then we're just going to put this inside of a filter. So we'll run this, and then we'll return the country with the absolute largest difference. So the largest difference in marriage rates between these years. Okay, so nice. So this is the answer to the question. We have Iceland. The second question, or part B of question 1, is looking at all of the countries with an increase in marriage rates. So we found Iceland. That should definitely be on our list. So what I'm first going to do is enter just the question. So this is going to help me keep track of what I'm actually trying to do. So how many countries in the dataset experienced an increase in their marriage rates between these 2 years? And what I might actually try to do here is just paste this as a comment into the code block. And we'll see if Gemini can be helpful here. Turns out today, Gemini is not being so helpful. So let's just think through what we might do in this case. So we first want to just find all the countries that experienced an increase in their marriage rates between the 2 years. So what we might do is actually just check for all the countries with an absolute difference greater than 0. And so this, again, is going to give us a true-false. We can check that it's, good code here because it's actually printing out something for us. But what we actually want is to put this inside a filter. So let's do that. And so here we can get all of the countries with a positive change in marriage rates between these 2 years. And we are off to the races. So in this case, the answer here would be 2. And we could also check this, doing it a slightly different way, and it should come out to be the same. So if we were to just check which countries have a marriage rate that's higher in 2019 than it is in 1990, then that should give us the same result. And it does. All right, so let's move on to C. So I'm just going to copy this over. So we're asked to create a column of the relative change in marriage rates between these 2 years. And then we're told exactly what the relative change is. And then which countries in the data set have the largest relative change between these 2 years. Okay, so this is all very similar to what we've already done. So all we have to do here is really just take the absolute difference. So we want the absolute difference, but we want to divide it by the base year. And Gemini's already read the question, and so is just sort of helping us out. So let's call this relative difference. And then we'll just define it with the single equality. Remember, the double equality is the logical check. So it's asking if two things are equal to each other. The single equality is the assignment operator, where we assign a new variable, or in this case, a new column. Okay, so we have absolute difference divided by the base year. And we know this is the base year because we're told how to construct the absolute, the relative change. And so we'll just run this, and it runs. So the next thing we want is which country in the dataset has the largest relative change between these 2 years. And so again, this is very similar to finding the maximum for absolute difference, except here we're doing relative difference. So I'm just going to replace all of the absolute differences with relative difference. This is a useful tool to copy and paste and then replace the things that are different with the thing you're working on. But you have to be pretty careful because sometimes you can you can miss something that you were supposed to replace. I do this all the time, and just something to watch out for. Okay, so nice. So this will give us all of the countries with the maximum relative difference. Okay, so Iceland, again, has the largest relative difference. Okay, so that was part C. We have our second question, which is about Amazon books. And so I'm just going to, again, enter this. If we use one hashtag, this is in a text block, which means it's not a comment. It's actually just what we call a markdown text cell. So one hashtag here, or $, just means that it's going to be a header. So it's going to be in big bold text. Okay, so then right below it, actually we want to enter the first question for us. So how many bestsellers are fiction books? So let's put that in the cell, and then here we already have books loaded. So I'm just going to use books as my data set. So the first thing to do in really all of these cases is to print out what the data set looks like. So I just want to see the first couple of rows. So this is actually books. Okay, nice. So we have the name of the book, we have the author, the rating, we have the reviews, and then some other information about it. Okay, so I'm going to add a code block, and what we're going to do is just filter for fiction books. So we can see nonfiction is spelled with capital letters and a space, which will be important when we start filtering for nonfiction books. For fiction books, we just want to filter the books that have a genre equal to fiction. So this is genre equal to fiction. And this gives us all of the books that are in this data set. Okay, so how many bestsellers are fiction books? And if we wanted to, we could actually list out the length of this thing. So just put length around it, which will print out how many rows are in the data set. But you could also just answer this looking at the number of rows. Okay, so let's add a text cell and move on to B. So we're going to ask about prices. How many nonfiction bestsellers cost more than $50? So again, this is another filter, and in this case, it's actually two conditions. We have a check for whether the book is a nonfiction book, and then we also have a check for whether the price is above $50. So I'm actually going to copy over this code. So I just put the original condition inside parentheses. This just makes the condition a little cleaner. I think technically you don't need it, but it's helpful in this case, at least for me reading the code. And then the second condition is whether the price is above $50. And we actually want nonfiction. So because I've printed out the first couple of rows, I can see that nonfiction in the genre column is spelled with 2 capital letters and a space in between. And so I'm just going to match this. And maybe a note here, I've listed books.genre to return the column, but you could equally just print out, we've used this syntax to print out to give us the column genre. And in both of these cases, it's, it means the same thing. So whichever one you use, that's up to you. So let me just write it like this. And then, so this will print out all of the nonfiction bestsellers that cost more than $50. Nice. So in this case, we have, looks like 4 of them. All right, so let's go to C. So how many bestsellers after 2015 didn't cost anything? So drop that in. So again, this is going to be another filter. So maybe what I'll do is just copy over the basic code for a filter. And what I want to do is filter for a year. It's going to be my first condition. And before I do anything else with this, I just want to check that I'm actually doing year properly. So let's run this. So this should give us all of the years that are greater than 2016. And what I might do in this case is just check that, I can look in the year column and see, I don't see anything less than 2015, but I just want to be sure. So I'm going to write unique just to print out all of the possible book years, just in a list. But I forgot to add year, and then so we'll print this out, and we get all of the years. And it turns out, yes, looks like we've only selected years that are greater than 2015. Okay, so nice. So we have our first condition. Now we want to add our second one. And Gemini sees what we're trying to do and gives us some of the nice code to do that. So again, we're looking for prices that are equal to 0. So we'll run that. And what we've done here is find all of the books after year 2015 with a price that's equal to 0. All right, very nice. And then last but not least, we're going to use the median price column to construct a new column of book price relative to the average bestseller price that year. So it's kind of a mouthful, but essentially all we're doing is comparing the median price to the book price to get the difference, essentially. So we'll just look at books and then say delta. Okay, so here we have book price and then books median price, and we just need to be careful we're actually spelling this correctly, and that'll give us a new column. All right, so run this, and let's just look at this. Books.head. Okay, so we can check. We have the median price for every year. We have the price for the book, and then we can check that delta actually makes sense. So we have a difference of 5, so that tells us that this book by Steve Harvey is above average price. Okay. So how many books are cheaper than average in that year? So all we have to do here is perform a second filter, or I guess in this case a first filter. So we're going to check whether, yeah, so Gemini got it. So whether books are, whether the delta is below 0. So whether they're cheaper than the average. So if they're equal to the average, their price, their delta is going to be 0. And so if they're below average, their delta will be less than 0. And this is one way of writing it out, the way the question is written. But you could easily, so we can just run this and get all of the books. But we could easily rewrite this without creating a new column by just comparing the price to the median. So we could just say, check, find all the books that are below average that year. And that would give us exactly the same data set. But this isn't the way the question was written, so I'm going to delete this. All right. And then the question was how many? So this was 321. All right. I'll see you in the next one.